So where do you want to start, man?
Yeah, we're going to start again with a spiral chart.
Love this one. I think this is my favorite chart. Do you want me to hit it in?
Yeah.
So if you haven't seen this chart, how would you explain it? You'll do a better job than me.
Well, if you say that the halving is the catalyst of each bull market, which kind of traditionally it has been in Bitcoin, due to the supply shock a little bit caused by the halving. Obviously, that's kind of that effect is diminishing, but it still has been the catalyst for each bull market. So if we take the spiral and we count in block time in this case, each halving is 210,000 blocks. So a full rotation in the spiral chart is 210,000 blocks, which is a little less than 4 years. And so if you do that, if you plot all the data points, then there are some interesting observations that you can make. The all-time highs and the bottoms, they kind of fall at a similar point in time if you do that. And besides the fact that the beautiful thing about the spiral chart is that without any model, it's possible to see Bitcoin's price spinning outwards. So you don't need any model to see where Bitcoin's price is going. So if we keep on following the same pattern, Bitcoin should reach between 100,000 and a million in next cycle, and possibly higher after that. So that is quite bullish.
If it continues to play out the same.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I think it's such a super interesting chart. What I can't decide with the halving driving the cycle is there some economics to it, or is it the narrative?
It's also a bit of a narrative. I mean, I think in the early days, the effect of the halving was obviously more intense, than it is now. That's why I like it to call it the halving hype cycle, because there's also just a lot of hype around the halving, which also obviously has an effect on price. And so it can still serve as a catalyst through this narrative, right? But yeah, indeed. But if we look a bit at if we zoom out even a little further, if we look at a bit of the macroeconomic picture, we can kind of also see that Bitcoin followed similar patterns to, for example, the S&P 500 or so. So it's not just that the halving. We cannot not say that the halving was the catalyst of each cycle. Bitcoin has been Bitcoin came out of the 2008 financial crisis, and so and Satoshi, for some reason, chose this 4-year period as a to have these halvings, and that kind of perfectly aligned also with the bigger macro picture. And so it's and we'll get to a chart as well later to show that.
And for the next cycle to fall between 100,000 and 1 million is quite broad.
Mm-hmm.
Why have you chosen those as the numbers so people understand?
Well, that is just simply looking at if we cross the 100, it seems like we're going to cross the 100,000 mark at least next cycle if we continue the same pattern in the. I actually don't think next cycle we will necessarily cross the million mark. That would maybe be for the cycle after that. But it seems like it's kind of impossible to not go above 100,000 if we follow the same pattern in the spiral chart.
And these red dots in the spiral chart, are they the bottom?
Yeah, those are the bottoms. Yeah.
And they look to be within just a few blocks of each other.
Yeah,
each 210,000.
If you go to the next slide, I drew a line from the center, and you can see that actually amazingly. But this is in Bitcoin time, so it's in block time. The all-time high from the last cycle and the current cycle, and also the bottoms from the last cycle and the current cycle, they are just like blocks apart, which is quite astonishing. But it was hard to predict this pattern because obviously the cycle before that was a little more shifted. So I still think also that using human time, like just years and months, is in general better to look at the chart than in block time, because I mean people don't think in block time, right? So it's but it's still astonishing that the all-time highs and the bottoms fell nearly at the exact same moment in the cycle.
And you know what? The one in the previous cycle is still fairly close, especially on the bottom.
Yeah.
But to me, that says this is more like a maturing market. You know, it's as it's matured, there's become some consistency because it's still not that far out. That's within what, 1/8 of the quadrant.
Yeah. It's still very close. I agree, and it seems to be that indeed this pattern could continue unless we deviate away from the halving cycle, which is still a possibility as well.
So, what block is the all-time high going to be at? You must have looked that up.
It's right in the chart, right? It's
did it say?
It's the 78,000, a little more, no?
Of the cycle.
Of the cycle.
So what that is? What's that?
That's maths I can't do.
Hold on, it's 210,000 times 4 plus, or times 3 plus.
Yeah, so
1,
it's
2, 3.
It's also in the chart.
Yeah, so it's 4 times 210,000 plus.
Yeah, it was the 630 plus the let's say 80,000. You know,
so it's about 710.
710. Yeah, that was more or less.
We need to be able to put alarms on our phones, play some blocks now. Block time. Can we do that?
I mean, probably.
NVK, well, saying block clock.
Yeah.
Okay.
Block alert.
Block alert. Do you yourself trade based on this data?
Yeah, I do. On a cycle basis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. It's fascinating. It blows my mind.
I'm not a day trader. Like, I cannot tell where the price is going tomorrow. But on a cycle basis, yeah, there are definitely very good patterns.
There are 2 trades you need to make on the cycle.
Basically, yeah.
It's fascinating. The other thing I like about it is that the way you track the price in the spiral chart, the lines have never crossed.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's quite an important thing to maintain, quite an interesting thing to maintain.
Yeah, if we would cross, that would, I mean, I do think, and I think I already mentioned that also in our last interview, is that at some point in time we will likely cross, because I do think cycles are, I mean, for now they're not shifting, but it's very likely that they will shift at some point in the future. And also if price is gonna stabilize a bit more at some point, maybe also it becomes more volatile first, but eventually, I mean, who knows? I mean, measured in USD, it could actually become more volatile. We'll also get to that. But if the market cap grows, it could happen that the lines will cross at some point in time. I mean, I still think that the spiral chart will be useful even if that happens. But it's cool for now that it hasn't happened.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that supports that is the liquid supply appears to always be falling as we have new Bitcoiners coming in, becoming hodlers. And then you add into that, there's less new supply coming in every day after the halving. You can see why there's a certain catalyst for it to keep growing like this.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I'll get to that in some of the charts as well. I made the hodl model, which we discussed also in the last interview, and there's definitely some interesting observations there that are actually very bullish.
All right, let's go to the next one then. Okay.
Yeah. So. Here we continue with the spiral chart, but now we use just normal time. So this is the 4-year cycle, which also is a common term in Bitcoin, right? But you can see now that the green dots, they are a little. Those are in the northwest, let's say. They are a bit. They're not completely on this on the vertical line. Let's say where the 4-year cycle starts, and because the halving is a little less than 4 years. So now one full rotation in the spiral represents 4 years, and obviously it's on log scale. So each ring, going outwards is times 10. So it goes from $1 to $10 and so forth. The most outer ring is $1 million in this case. And yeah, what the cool thing about looking at this in human time is because we can track a bit better seasonality as well. So it seems every 4 years at least around Christmas time we have this all-time high. It again came true this cycle. And the year after, around Christmas time, we have we have a bottom. Those red dots in the bottom.
And they're even closer. The bottoms are even closer in those 3 years, based on time.
Yeah. So you can see that the halving kind of shifts back a little bit. I also added in the predicted halving of this. So there's one green dot there. That's actually, I put that at 40,000 because I think that's a reasonable price to make at the next halving. But you can see that again, that's a little shifted. It's a little earlier in the cycle. I mean, we will reach that point a little earlier than the previous halving in the same cycle. And so the halvings, so the cycles are shifting a little bit, and you can also see that in the bottoms very well, right? So all those 3 dots. They appear a little earlier in the cycle. Also the all-time high in the last cycle, at least it did not in the previous cycle. But yeah, so the cycles are shifting a little bit there. But yeah, most of the all-time highs are all made in that first quadrant, which is one very interesting observation. And I think all bottoms are in the south. And it's very likely that if we continue the pattern with the cycle, that the bottom is in this time. Like, I'm way more confident now than I was last time. Last time we had like this capitulation event in June, which was a true capitulation event. Like, it was a significant one, like comparable with bottoms of other cycles. So, but time-wise, yeah, there was still this the south of this chart that like kept saying like, okay, we can make another low there, and I warned for that last time, and indeed that it did happen as well. We made another low, although I was not sure if we were going to make another low, but I did expect some downside still in that south area. But we did make another low, and that was also mainly due to like the events that happened around FTX, and so if we didn't have an FTX or so, maybe we would have just made like another low, but not not a cycle low there. But in this case, we did.
Isn't it strange though? Every cycle we find a reason or something happens that does cause that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not that strange, because if price starts going down, things start falling apart. So it's just like this waterfall effect, and so it's not that strange. But there's some event that will happen indeed, and it depends on which one.
So Christmas time is going to be good.
Not
this year, next year.
Yeah. So we're still a year away from the halving, and basically if we would make an all-time high again at more or less the same time in the cycle, that would be two years out.
All right, man.
Yeah, here I marked still the all-time highs, the bottoms, and the halvings.
That's mad.
That they're like all at exactly the same moment in the cycle.